The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across Maple Grove's most meticulously manicured neighborhood as Mark Reynolds stood motionless, his fists clenched around a pristine white envelope. The Homeowners Association letterhead might as well have been a declaration of war. Another citation, another ridiculous complaint about his 8-year-old daughter Emma's beloved swing set. Emma watched from the kitchen window, her small fingers tracing invisible patterns on the glass. She knew that look on her father's face, the one that transformed his usually calm demeanor into something that hummed with quiet determination. Mark had always been the kind of man who solved problems with calculated precision, a structural engineer whose professional life was built on finding creative solutions to seemingly impossible challenges. "They can't do this," he muttered, though no one was listening. The HOA's latest letter was crystal clear. The wooden swing set in the backyard violated at least 7 different community guidelines, its height exceeded regulations, its placement didn't conform to setback requirements, and its rustic aesthetic apparently clashed with the neighborhood's carefully curated visual harmony. What the HOA didn't understand was that this wasn't just a piece of playground equipment. That swing set had been Mark's weekend project with Emma, a labor of love meticulously crafted from cedar wood they had selected together. Every joint was reinforced, every plank sanded smooth. Emma had helped him paint the trim soft blue, her favorite color, and had spent countless hours swinging, her laughter echoing through their backyard. Sarah, Mark's wife, approached him cautiously. A pediatric nurse with a no-nonsense attitude, she had long been the mediator between Mark's engineering-driven perfectionism and the world's bureaucratic nonsense. "Maybe we could modify it," she suggested, her voice a mixture of hope and resignation. Mark shook his head, a dangerous glint entering his eyes. "They don't want to compromise. They want compliance." Emma, sensing the tension, walked into the living room. At 8 years old, she was perceptive beyond her years, a trait she had clearly inherited from her father. "Daddy," she said softly to my swing set going away. The question hung in the air, weighted with more emotion than a simple inquiry about playground equipment. It was about fairness, about a child's right to play, about a family's ability to create joy within their own space. Mark looked at his daughter, her hopeful eyes, the slight tremble in her lower lip, and something inside him shifted. This was no longer just about a swing set. This was about standing up to a system that seemed more interested in uniformity than in the genuine happiness of its residents. "No, sweetheart," he said, a smile slowly spraying across his face, the kind of smile that made his engineering colleagues both admire and slightly fear his innovative thinking. "Your swing set isn't going anywhere. In fact, we're going to do something they'll never expect." Little did the Maple Grove Homeowners Association know that Mark Reynolds was about to turn their world upside down, quite literally. The Reynolds dining room transformed overnight into an engineering war room. Blueprints, calculations, and sketches covered every available surface, held down by coffee mugs and well-worn drafting tools. Mark's laptop displayed a dizzying array of 3D modeling software, each screen showing progressively more elaborate designs that made Sarah raise an eyebrow each time she passed by. "A Ferris wheel?" she asked on the third night of Mark's obsessive planning. "You're seriously considering building a Ferris wheel?" Mark looked up, his eyes bright with the same enthusiasm he used to reserve for complex bridge design projects. "Not just a Ferris wheel," he corrected, spreading out a meticulously drawn blueprint. "An educational, perfectly engineered marvel that will technically comply with every single HOA regulation while giving Emma exactly what she wants, and more." Emma, who had been quietly coloring at the end of the table, looked up. "Will it be taller than my swing set?" she asked, a mischievous glint in her eye. "Much taller," Mark confirmed, which earned him a high five from his daughter. The preliminary calculations were mind-boggling. Mark's professional background as a structural engineer gave him a unique advantage. He knew precisely how to navigate the intricate world of load-bearing structures, wind resistance, and safety regulations. Each evening after work, he would refine his plans, consulting old textbooks, engineering forums, and even reaching out to former colleagues who specialize in recreational structure design. The Ferris wheel would be a marvel of modern engineering, compact enough to fit within their property lines, yet tall enough to make a statement. Mark calculated the precise angles, the optimal rotation speed, and even designed custom safety features that would make any playground inspector proud. It wasn't just a playground addition. It was a masterpiece of mathematical precision and parental determination. Sarah watched her husband with a mixture of amusement and concern. As a pediatric nurse, she understood the importance of play and childhood joy. But she also knew the potential for neighborhood drama that was brewing. "The HOA is going to lose their minds," she muttered, sorting through some of Mark's technical drawings. "That's precisely the point," Mark replied, his voice calm and calculated. What the HOA didn't realize was that Mark Reynolds was about to turn their rigid rulebook into his personal playground. Every calculation, every design choice was a calculated act of suburban rebellion. He wasn't just building a Ferris wheel, he was crafting a monument to parental creativity and a child's right to play. Emma, sensing the magnitude of what was happening, became Mark's unofficial assistant. She would bring him specific colored pencils, hold measuring tapes, and ask endless questions that somehow always seemed to spark a new innovative solution in her father's mind. "Will it have lights?" she asked one evening. Mark paused, then smiled. "Not just lights. We're going to make this the most spectacular thing Maple Grove has ever seen." The blueprint was no longer just a plan. It was a declaration, a promise of something extraordinary that would challenge every preconceived notion of suburban conformity. The first Saturday of construction began like a military operation. Mark had enlisted the help of his best friend and fellow engineer, Tom Rodriguez, who arrived at dawn with a truck loaded with industrial-grade materials that made the neighbors crane their necks in curiosity. "You're sure about this?" Tom asked, unloading a massive concrete mixer that looked more suited to a commercial construction site than a residential backyard. Mark's response was a characteristic half-smile. "Absolutely." Emma bounced between her father and Tom, wearing a miniature hard hat she had begged her parents to buy. She was part mascot, part quality control inspector, her excitement infectious as the first foundation holes were dug. The initial stages of construction drew mixed reactions from the neighborhood. Mrs. Henderson from 2 doors down watched through her lace curtains, her phone practically vibrating with potential HOA complaint texts. The Peterson twins from across the street set up lawn chairs, treating the entire project like the most entertaining reality show they'd ever witnessed. Sarah managed the logistical nightmare, coordinating permits, checking local ordinances, and ensuring every single regulatory box was meticulously checked. She had become Mark's strategic advisor, her nursing precision complementing his engineering creativity. By midday, the first structural elements began to take shape. Mark's calculations were proving themselves with each precisely measured and welded piece of steel. The foundation was a marvel of engineering, so over-engineered that it could potentially withstand a small earthquake, let alone the gentle rotation of a backyard Ferris wheel. Neighbors began to gather. What started as suspicious glances transformed into genuine curiosity. Mark had strategically designed the structure to be both a functional playground element and a work of art. The steel framework caught the sunlight in a way that made it look almost sculptural, more like a piece of modern art than a conventional amusement ride. "It's going to have 6 seats," Emma announced to anyone who would listen, "and each seat has a special color, and Daddy says they're made from recycled materials." Tom chuckled, handing Mark another welding tool. "You're making the HOA's worst nightmare into an engineering masterpiece." By sunset, the initial framework was taking shape, a skeletal structure that hinted at the marvel it would become. Mark stood back, wiping sweat from his forehead, Emma perched on his shoulders. They watched as the day's last light glinted off the steel, casting long shadows across their transforming backyard. Unknown to Mark, a silver Honda had been parked down the street for most of the day. Inside, a stern-faced individual from the Maple Grove Homeowners Association had been documenting every single moment of the construction, their fingers flying across a smartphone keyboard. The rebellion was officially underway, and the first battle had been won, not with confrontation, but with creativity, precision, and an unwavering commitment to a child's right to play. Little did the HOA know that Mark Reynolds was just getting started. The official HOA letter arrived precisely 3 weeks after construction began, a crisp white envelope that seemed to radiate official disapproval. Mark read it twice, then a third time, a slow smile spreading across his face. "They're claiming structural violations," he announced to Sarah, who was preparing dinner. Emma's ears perked up from the living room where she was doing homework. The letter was a masterpiece of bureaucratic language. Paragraphs of legal jargon essentially accused Mark of creating an unauthorized recreational structure that violated no fewer than 17 separate community guidelines. They demanded immediate cessation of construction and threatened significant fines. But Mark had anticipated this. Every single bolt, every weld, every measurement had been meticulously planned to meet and often exceed local building codes. Tom had helped him compile an inch-thick binder of documentation, structural integrity reports, safety calculations, material specifications, and compliance certificates. Sarah reviewed the documentation with her trademark nursing precision. "They're reaching," she concluded. "You've covered every possible legal angle." The neighborhood watched with increasing fascination. What had started as a curiosity had become a full-blown community spectacle. Children would ride their bikes past the Reynolds property, parents would slow down their evening walks, and everyone seemed to be waiting for the next chapter of the unfolding drama. Mr. Alvarez, the retired city inspector who lived 2 doors down, became an unexpected ally. He'd stop by, examine Mark's work, and offer quiet words of engineering wisdom. "Best foundation work I've seen in years," he'd mutter, giving Mark a conspiratorial wink. Emma had become the project's most enthusiastic documentarian. She maintained a scrapbook of construction progress, complete with measurements, sketches, and newspaper clippings about local zoning laws that she convinced her father to help her understand. Her third-grade teacher was both bemused and impressed by her newfound expertise in civil engineering and municipal regulations. The Ferris wheel was taking shape as something more than just a playground equipment. It was becoming a symbol, a statement about creativity, about challenging restrictive norms, about a father's love for his daughter. As the HOA's letter sat on the kitchen counter, Mark began preparing his response. It would be a document so thoroughly researched, so meticulously detailed, that it would make the HOA's complaint look like a child's crayon drawing. What the Homeowners Association didn't realize was that they had picked a fight with the wrong structural engineer. Outside, the half-constructed Ferris wheel caught the evening light, its steel frame a promise of something extraordinary. Emma watched from her bedroom window, her excitement building with each passing day. She knew somehow that this was more than just a playground addition. This was her father's masterpiece, a testament to imagination, engineering, and pure, unbridled determination. The battle with the HOA was about to enter its most interesting phase. The community center's meeting room buzzed with an electric tension that Mark Reynolds had only previously experienced during high-stakes engineering presentations. Rows of chairs were filled with neighborhood residents, local media, and the entire Maple Grove Homeowners Association board. Each person leaned forward with barely contained anticipation. Emma sat between her parents, wearing a pressed navy dress and her lucky engineering notebook. She looked more like a junior executive than an 8-year-old, her posture straight, her eyes scanning the room with a mixture of curiosity and determination that mirrored her father's. Harold Simpkins, the HOA board president, looked like a man who had never encountered a challenge he couldn't bureaucratically suffocate. His glasses perched precariously on a nose that seemed designed for looking down at people. "Mr. Reynolds," he began, his voice dripping with manufactured authority, "you are in direct violation of no fewer than 17 community guidelines." Mark stood and the room fell silent. In his hand was a presentation folder that Tom had helped him prepare, a comprehensive document that was part engineering marvel, part legal masterpiece. 17 guidelines, Mark repeated, his voice calm and methodical. "Let me address each one." What followed was nothing short of a surgical deconstruction of the HOA's arguments. Mark presented detailed architectural renderings, structural integrity reports, safety certifications, and compliance documents. Each slide was a testament to his engineering expertise, showing how the Ferris wheel not only met but exceeded every single regulation. The most compelling moment came when Mark pulled out a series of educational benefits. The Ferris wheel wasn't just a playground structure. It was a fully interactive learning experience. He designed educational elements into every aspect, mathematical calculations visible in the wheel's design, physics principles demonstrated through its rotation, even astronomical tracking capabilities built into its framework. Sarah supported him silently, her nurse's precision complementing his engineering approach. Emma occasionally leaned over, whispering additional details she'd learned during the project's construction. Mr. Alvarez, the retired city inspector, nodded approvingly from the back of the room. Several neighborhood children craned their necks, completely captivated by the technical presentation that looked more like a NASA mission briefing than a typical HOA dispute. Harold Simpkins' composure began to crack. His fingers drummed nervously on the table and beads of sweat formed on his forehead. The meticulously prepared attack on Mark's project was falling apart, dissected by engineering precision and bureaucratic thoroughness. Furthermore, Mark concluded this structure represents innovation, educational opportunity, and community engagement. Precisely the values I believe Maple Grove claims to represent. A murmur went through the crowd. What had started as a potential punishment was transforming into something else entirely, a showcase of creativity, engineering brilliance, and parental dedication. Emma caught her father's eye and gave him a barely perceptible thumbs up. The entire room seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the HOA board's response.